All right, now we're recording.
We're recording, okay. It is 7:02. We will call the HRB meeting to order. And first question is, are there any public comment cards in your possession?
There are not at this time.
Right, we have no public comments, so we will move directly into public hearings. Tonight we have two public hearings on the agenda. The first one is GLU 20-00007, HR 20-04. We will open that public hearing with the required statement. The criteria for approval of a land use action are contained in Chapter 17 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. The proposed development must comply with applicable provisions contained in the Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. Generally, unless otherwise noted, if a request is found to be consistent with the municipal code, it is considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you wish to participate in this hearing, including challenges for bias or conflict of interest, you must complete the sign-in form located on the table at the front of the meeting room and deliver it to staff. Please do so immediately. The chair will only recognize those who have submitted completed forms. Testimony will be taken in the following order. First, the applicant. Second, any testimony in support of the applicant. Third, testimony in opposition. And fourth, rebuttal by the applicant. When recognized by the chair, please come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and make your statement. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented regarding this request must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Please address only the applicable criteria for the decision. Please do not repeat testimony. If you wish, you may choose merely to agree with the previous speaker's statement. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of persons to participate in the public hearing, either orally or in writing, precludes that person's right of appeal to the City Council or LUBA. Written testimony submitted prior to the hearing constitutes participation in the hearing. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The Commission shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to the standards contained in ORS 197.763. Do any of the board members have conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
No.
No, but I would like to disclose that both myself and the applicant are subject to a maintenance agreement for the pavement in the Hedges Street right away between 4th and 5th Avenue.
Okay, and I want to make the statement that I've made before. My wife and I are both licensed real estate brokers in Oregon, and in that capacity, we assist members of the public in the purchase and sale of residential properties, including some in the Kenema and McLaughlin districts. This property is not currently on the market, and selling it is not any part of this discussion, so there is no conflict of interest in that. Regarding ex parte contact, as stated at the last meeting, we discussed this at the neighborhood association meeting back when we could have things like that. I think it was in February. I recused myself from that discussion, but was present throughout. So has everybody visited the site?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Does anyone in the vast viewing audience wish to challenge or comment on conflict of interest or ex parte statements by board members? None. Okay. So we move to HR 20-04. We'll start with a staff report.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Basinger. My name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a senior planner with Oregon City, and we're getting the PowerPoint presentation up. And here we go. This is a staff presentation of HR 2004, which is a new single-family detached home and detached garage in the Kenema National Register District. This evening, we have some items to enter into the record. There's a public comment from Chrissy Geis, a neighbor in the Kenema neighborhood, as well as an email from Chair John McLaughlin, who could not make it this evening, and I want to read out his comments. They were sent to you, but I want to read it out loud for the record. 1 second. These are regarding this application. He says, HR 20-04, I'm fine with the way it looks. The fact that they are choosing Leland cypress for the front plantings will help them mitigate the size. They are a fast-growing evergreen that will soften the front. The size now is fine and will work better for the site. They've done what I think is the best they can while trying to appease the guidelines. So that portion of his email dated May 22nd has been added to the record, as well as public comments from Chrissy Geis. One additional clarification I want to add to the record. On page 20 of the staff report, there was a grammatical error. It initially said that there should be an emphasis of the horizontal versus the vernacular, and when in fact it should say vertical. So the design should have an emphasis on the horizontal versus the vertical. So please add that to the record to clarify. The applicant has the 120-day deadline for this application. As recall, at the last meeting, it was extended to June 20th. So the Historic Review Board is required to make a decision this evening or request that the applicant extend the 120-day date. Next slide. Oh, I can do this. Never mind. Thank you. So the options the board has this evening, you have option to deny the application, to request the applicant provide a 120-day extension to August 6th and return at June 23rd, hearing with revised drawings as directed by the board. Approve the application as conditioned in the staff report. And number 4, approve the application with revised conditions. And I've identified 2 conditions, number 7 and number 14, that I think comprise the majority of deliberations this evening. Staff has provided denial findings within the staff report that the board can utilize or supplement. However, if the board wishes to move forward with approval, staff requests that in the deliberations and potentially even part of the motion that the board provide additional findings for approval. Just to provide an overview, once again, this is located at the corner of 4th and Hedges. This is a 10,000 square foot lot in the Kenema National Register District. The site is also in a geologic hazard review. The applicant has applied for a geologic hazard review, which is a type 2 staff review. It is currently incomplete, and they're waiting for the final plans as approved by the board before they complete that application and notice for their geologic hazard review. Here's some street view right at the corner of 4th and Hedges, looking up to the site. You'll notice, and know as part of the applicant's presentation and probably as part of your deliberation is this discussion of the upslope of the lot, kind of at a cross slope intersection. This is at 4th Avenue looking up. There are some adjacent houses to the site, both historic and non-historic. We do have a tree preservation and removal requirements, and those are embedded into the existing conditions of approval about providing the minimum removal of trees. The applicant, subsequent to the April meeting, has submitted revised plans. I'll provide some brief overview and the applicant can provide more detail. The applicant in the revised plans, you'll notice, provides planting of the Leland cypress, which you can see on the plans, further providing kind of fast-growing tree shade towards the view corridor. Instead of providing side steps up to the porch on 4th Avenue, the applicant has provided an alternative approach, which is a new kind of rear side elevation entrance right along the driveway at Hedges Street. And you can see that right around here. So this is where that new side entrance is, and these are where the Leland cypresses are. The applicant has not, in the revised plans, kept the east elevation with at grade, though the west elevation, you would now have that new, both the bump out and the new porch addition. So that will play into one of the conditions of approval of the final approved width. This is the revised entryway. You'll notice there was discussion at the April meeting about turning the lower basement elevation into looking more of exactly what that is, a basement. So kind of smaller basement windows, some siding, and what looks like concrete, but I'll ask confirmation from the applicant, as well as a new kind of service door to the rear, right behind that tree. Right now, the gable is still open, so there is still a condition of approval with closing that gable, as well as having either full or half-light doors on this the kind of second story or ground floor elevation. So that'll be further in your discussions about how you want to approach those doors. This is the revised side elevation. Oh, excuse me, this is the rear elevation, excuse me. You're looking at the driveway, looking at the rear of the house. This is the east elevation, so this has not changed since the initial submittal. So this is re-included for reference. And once again, this area right here shows the at-grade bump out. This is the floor plan, once again with the revised porch. And here we are with the revised west elevation with the kind of what would traditionally be kind of the rear side entry in the back with some stairs up. And it looks like these, I'll have the applicant further explain if these are metal railings or wood railings. So the conditions of approval haven't changed from the last meeting, but really I think most of the deliberation will be with condition approval number 7, which initially was the recommendation to continue to have the front elevation be the 4th Avenue elevation, close the gable, use a single entry door on the main floor of the north elevation, and connect that porch through the use of a side stair. So the applicant has chosen, in lieu of a side stair, to do the new kind of side entrance But I think the three other items should be further discussed by the board. How to approach the doors on that porch elevation, as well as the closing the gable. Finally, number 14, initially staff recommended a maximum width of 37 feet at grade, so that would have changed the east elevation that was at grade to be cantilevered if it were removed, or an alternate as approved by the board. So it looks like with the new, I'm going to move back for a second, with the new site plan showing the side elevation, what the actual width is considered. That can be a conversation with the board, and I'll work with you as staff to figure out how that condition should be written to further refine, or if you want to accept the application as proposed, you can just identify that in the staff report that this is approved with the revised May plans. So I'm going to go back to the conditions of approval. Once again, number 7 and 14, I think, are the ones that are going to have primarily most of the deliberations on. What I did notice, what was missing was our standard discussion about lap siding being smooth cement board or wood. And as this is a bungalow, it can be either 4 or 6 inch reveal. And then number 20, it talks about, which goes back a little bit to the condition approval number 7, about the doors on the front facade either being half light or solid. So depending on what number 7 is, number 20 can be revised in this conversation. So once again, your options are to deny the application, request an extension, or approve. Excuse me, that was the last one. I'm going to go back to that was an old slide. I apologize. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the presentation. Your options are deny, request an extension, approve as conditioned, or approve with revised conditions after deliberation. So I'm available for any questions the board has, and I know the applicant is ready to present as well to give a little background of how they got to the revised plans based on listening to public comment as well as the direction of the board at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll now call the applicants. See, your microphones are still turned off.
We're getting it. Just a second.
Okay.
Real quick before that, Christina, could you speak to, is there a setback preservation incentive being requested?
Let's see.
On the side, towards the Hedges Street right away, is that?
Yeah, let's go to that. I'll have to take a look at the plans, and I'll be back to you in just a second, Grant. My eyes are not good enough. I need to zoom in. Why don't we, is it all right if I do a little work and then while the applicant's speaking and I can respond back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can it be turned on to vote?
I hear you now, yes.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I just want to hear your comments on it. I read Mr. Robinson's comments in the material provided, and I think the board would be particularly interested in anything that you have to say about the conditions of approval number 7 and 14 that Christina just brought up when she was giving the staff report.
Hey, I'll just say a couple of things quickly.
Yeah.
For me? Okay. The elevations, the east and south elevations that were just presented a couple minutes ago are the older ones. There's not a huge difference on them. I don't think that's where the significant concern is. Out that those look slightly different now. Because he emphasized the entry door on the south side. And then I think that's it for now. Mila, if you want to talk about what you want to talk about.
I just wanted to say that we met with Christina, or we spoke with Christina a couple of times on the phone, and Bo was able to connect with her as well to work further on all of the things you guys wanted us to change since last meeting. And I wanted to emphasize that I understand there was a big concern with covering the basement and making it more look like a basement. So we decided to build like a, you could see that on some of the industrial buildings where there's like a cage with greenery that goes and kind of covers the main level. And it could be fake or real, that just grows to make it more look like greenery rather than a structure. That's what the green area is on the drawings. That is, I also wanted to emphasize that this is sixth time we're coming back to you guys with trying to make this work and trying to make everybody happy. And in 2 years, this is our sixth time. I guess that's all I had to say.
Well, Mila, I appreciate the hard work that you've obviously put into it in the last month. That's very evident in the changes in the drawings. And I personally think that we're very close right now. So, again, I appreciate the work that you and your architect have done on this.
Thank you.
Does any board member have a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple, I guess. So on the north elevation and I guess the west elevation on the basement portion, the 9-sided part is just kind of exposed concrete behind there?
Like I said, the plan is to have exposed concrete with that caging with, I originally wanted real greenery just going and covering it. You can obviously buy a mature plant from the beginning, so it looks like there's greenery versus pure concrete showing from the street.
Okay.
And to add to that, so, and I honestly can't remember the reason at the moment is why one side has all concrete and no siding, and then the north side has partial concrete up to the bottom of the windows and then siding. There's some logic behind that. It's escaping me at the moment, but Mila kind of explained the concept there. And I think I would say in respect to those particular issues, I think we're really open to some, coming to a kind of collaborative agreement on what is the best way to sort of mitigate that. We can't make it invisible, but we can try I think I'm on board for the concept of trying to make that seem a little bit more like a cellar basement. I mean, you can't because it's actually all the way out of the ground, but maybe by doing that, kind of almost creating a window well effect in a sense that sort of puts more emphasis on the areas above that space. And I love the idea of the basically the metal trellis work with that seems fitting, you know, historically. Aesthetically, I like it.
Yeah, I agree. I like what you did on the north elevation, and then putting some greenery on top of that to kind of further. I think that's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I remembered. I knew that nothing was going to grow under that deck, so that's why I didn't put the trellis work on the north side. So.
Oh, okay. And then, so now that the north elevation is a side of the house rather than the front, do you have any comments on, so at least in one of the public comments and in Ken's comments from last meeting, discussed taking the gable out of the porch roof there on what would be the north elevation. Are you opposed to that or in favor of that?
Taking it out altogether. I would want to actually see what it looked like to make sure it doesn't sort of elongate the building or make it feel taller, I guess, is the only concern I'd have. And I'm not sure if that would be the case, but I just want to see it. But and then Mia, of course, that's your home, so I'm not sure how you know we could. The only problem is too is that it's a little deeper because of the gable, which gives them an outdoor space, you know, to furnish a little bit and stuff. So if we were to take the gable away, we would lose that extra depth in a sense. But what do you think, Mila?
I think I like the gable.
Okay. But we would just close it and not have the. We can still vault it, but we just wouldn't have the open gable with the beams there.
We've lost your sound.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, maybe I was mumbling. I think that if we were to keep it and take away the vault, you know, the open gable aspect of it, and so that it's not as prominent of a feature, still give them the extra space, that would be ideal, I think, for their function.
Okay. Regarding the doors out onto the deck, I'll get to you in a second, Claire. Okay.
Okay.
It was pointed out last meeting that double doors are really not a thing in Kenema, and I say that living in one of the very few houses that does have double doors. So, but I had nothing to do with it. It was already that way when we bought the house. And the other two houses in Kenema that have double doors were both built before the historic guidelines ever took effect. They date back into the 1940s in one case and the 1970s in the other. So double doors in Kenema generally are just not done.
Yes,
I gave Christina a photograph of the best example of a bungalow house in Kenema, and I don't know if she has.
I can get that up. Just a second, Ken.
Can I comment or?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, here's a suggestion I would have. Again, I don't know if that site line of sight diagram I did, kind of showing how much you got to crank your neck to even see those doors from.
I agree.
But with that being said, Mila, and this is obviously something you know, it's more about your living pattern and everything. But I think aesthetically, I would actually like to see windows there that maybe even a little bit wider, and it seems like that would match architecturally and kind of historically. And then maybe just a single door on the sidewall that goes into the breakfast room. So you wouldn't even see a door at all from, well, I mean, yeah, maybe slightly, but on that sidewall as opposed to, open to that?
Yes.
Okay.
If we, get the bigger windows instead of the doors, then yes.
So I think that would solve that. I think it would really actually look, if whatever you're going to see from, I think it would, match more seeing the top half of, single hung windows there as opposed to the double doors, the full light double doors there. So.
Let's ask Claire what your question was.
I just wanted to make a comment, on the gable ends. I think that they, have not the cross pieces. Oh. Was that the picture that you submitted?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
And that it's not exactly a classic bungalow, but it is the best example of a bungalow in Kanema. And you can see the full width porch, the generally symmetrical layout, and all of those things you're good with. But you also see the single door in the center. And I don't remember what the width of this is. I'm pretty sure it's around 30 feet. So it's a little smaller than what you're talking about.
Oh, that's really nice.
This is an authentic 1917 construction.
Here's one thought. Is I'm looking at now when everything changed. This thing is more as time has gone on. We could just we could not do the gable and do the shed that we have there a little bit deeper, because I wouldn't mind if the lower pitch portion of the shed actually went up closer to the bottom side of the windows of that upper level anyways, instead of having the intersection kind of below them. And we could sort of kill two birds with one stone. We could get the extra depth there for use, but then potentially eliminate the gable. If you think that you want to emphasize the other side more, just feeling more like the side in a sense.
Well, you had the deck itself kicks out a little bit beneath the gable.
Right.
Yeah. And that would mean that your roof edge would have to correspondingly extend further, wouldn't it?
Well, right. So there's about
gable conceals that.
Yeah, there's about a 2 foot difference between the shed portion of the porch and the gable portion.
Yeah.
And so what I'm suggesting is maybe a kind of a compromise would be to actually deepen the shed porch, maybe not quite out to where the gable is, but close to that, and not have the gable, but get the extra depth all the way across the porch. If we feel like the gable, I personally like the gable, but if that's a concern, we could just keep the function for them by just deepening the shed portion of the porch and not having the gable at all, basically. To me, it kind of breaks up a really long roof, but and I think it helps keep it feeling like it's. I think the gable actually keeps it from feeling wider in a sense, because that long roof on the porch, to me, it just makes it feel wider by not having it broken up, I guess, but visually.
But it also accents the horizontal, where with the gable, it kind of accentuates the vertical. It takes your eye up.
Yeah. That's definitely thought-provoking. It's so hard without having a three-dimensional kind of view of it, because of how much you're looking up at it to begin with, from 4th Street anyways. Thinking about how what that'll be like, from way down below. I suppose we're kind of looking at it straight on.
On a staff level, I do have a comment back to HRB members Blythe's question about setbacks, if this is a good time.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the R6 zone has a 10-foot corner side setback, and the covered porch is 9 feet 7 inches, so it's about 5 inches too short. So the applicant can shift the house, they can slightly reduce the depth of the porch. There's lots of options that the applicant have. To get a preservation incentive, we actually have to notice it, and I checked back at the February notice for the meeting, and it didn't include that their preservation incentive was being requested, so it can't be approved tonight. It could be approved through a separate application, through a continued application to renotice, or the applicant can shift the house to make it work within the underlying zones.
For some reason, we had a 15-foot setback there, going way back. And if it is 10, then we're so close that we could just make that go away one way or the other. But I just want to verify that we're not incorrect on the setback, because I think we were told it was 15.
I'm double checking right now with the R6 zone.
I think because it was what type of street it was potentially.
That's a corner. So a corner for the R6 zone is 10 feet. And it may be that the initial conversations happened before our code changes. And so we've had some code changes this year that further reduce the setback. So my recommendation is just to put additional condition of approval that just requires the applicant to modify the porch or shift the house to meet the underlying zone setbacks.
So we're only 4 inches away from that now, right?
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, you're 5, but yes, yeah. You're very close. So it's an easy condition to add.
And you will work up some wording on that, Christina?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can only do math until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Any other questions?
I get one last question. The columns from the elevations weren't super clear. Are they rounded or are they square? And do you have a preference? Are they what you want?
Square is definitely the design concept. We were told kind of early in the process to keep them fairly simple. So basically, larger, because we don't want them to look spindly. But we're very basic and just with a pretty standard cap and base. The Kanema bungalow style would not have ornate columns with large bases or tapered tops or anything like that. So.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think round is very typical of a bungalow, but you can't so much tell from the elevation. So
yeah, it almost has that appearance for some reason. I agree. And speaking of that same subject, I do have a question on what I'm sort of deeming the front porch, which is off hedges. Is would it be appropriate to screen under the porch with the same siding as the house, or to leave it open underneath? In my head, for some reason, it seems like a bungalow would have a siding under that. But maybe I'm incorrect.
I mean, I think siding would be consistent with the other homes that are right around there that have under their front
edge of the deck.
I think so, yeah.
It's the
Seems
west elevation.
the way to go to me, but just wanted to verify.
And this is on what elevation?
It'd be the west on Hedges.
Okay. Yeah, to me it should be, I would think, landscape screen or siding.
Question for staff on that. If you do that, does that then add to your 37-foot dimension on the width of the house?
Well, I think that's a question the board's going to have to make, because as proposed, the staff's initial recommendation of 37 feet at grade, this plan doesn't meet. So the board's going to have to deliberate if they want to move forward with the plan as proposed. They could remove that condition, just accept the plan as proposed. That's one option. And if you want to revise the plan, you could put that revision in. But if you're feeling comfortable with the plan as proposed, we can remove that condition and just accept the revised drawings. The one other option you can do for the under porch is we often have kind of some options. The applicant can do, historically appropriate lattice, siding. You could give a couple options. That's another idea.
A quick question.
So with the patio, the porch, whatever, how wide is it then? What's the depth of that?
Yeah, approximate 15.
15.
Wide and 5 feet deep.
5 foot deep, so it would be 37, 22, or excuse me, 42 wide.
Let's see, we would be hanging, yeah, I guess, because that's cantilever, we're hanging that off a cantilever, aren't we? So, So you would, if we did that, if we did siding, we'd have to kind of run it all the way back to the foundation just for that area. The one thing I wondered though, visually, because you can see that it's open from the deck level up, it wouldn't give the impression of being part of the foundation because, you're seeing it as a porch area. But I think that is definitely a concern. And I was just going to ask, so this should be meeting 37 feet at grade, correct? It's drawn.
The east elevation wasn't meeting it because.
Right, because that's I didn't supply you with the new one. I'm not sure. Because there is an updated east elevation that shows it all cantilevered.
Okay, well, if you feel as the applicant you can meet the condition, which is 37 feet on grade, and maybe the board can make a revision to this side porch, that can be a condition, and that can just be reflected in the plans that staff reviews.
Yes, there is. Go ahead.
If you have it really quickly, you can email it to me, and I can add it to the hearing right now if you want.
On your screen right there, that little basement level that's being partially cut off shows that bottom level, the width of that foundation of the building at 37 feet. That's it.
So that's good.
That's certainly the intention.
So the east elevation drawings would show a cantilever?
Yes, yeah, and I thought I did a PDF of that.
I didn't get it.
Okay. But yes, that's the intention, is that, because I thought, I definitely was trying to meet that requirement, was that the base of the building is going to be no wider than 37. And I think what would probably look the best would be for that porch off of hedges to actually side or lattice, whatever seems appropriate, and actually extend that. Maybe lattice would be better because it wouldn't seem like a solid surface. And then extend that to the actual foundation just to keep it kind of clean and not to have too many different things going on. And if we did more of a, or maybe we could even, sorry.
Well, I think lattice is one application that I think would fit, you know, as long as it was the square, not the, what do you call it, the...
Diamond.
Diagonal.
Not the diamond shape, but the square, right?
Square.
Yeah.
Not the diagonal.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I think we can just put it in the conditions as at the discretion of the applicant. I think that's fine.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no further questions for the applicants, then I would ask if there are any members of the public prepared to speak for or against the application as submitted. None? Okay, in that case, then I'd like to close the public hearing and move into deliberations on this.
I'm going to get the slide up with the 2 recommended conditions of approval just to help you to see if 7 and 14 need to be removed or revised, and you can let me know and I will type it in. But Laura's what can get up. It's page 16 and 17 of the presentation. Okay, so let's go to 16 first. Page 16. And then we'll go one more up. Okay. So conditions of approval number 7 and 14 are there if the board wants to have conversations. I wasn't catching everything because I was looking at the setback. So I know there was discussions about the doors and the gable and maybe an alignment. And so that might be a good deliberation, as well as kind of a final discussion about the 37 feet at grade. And my recommendation would be then to also add the porch as proposed for number 14. Oh, the board wants to have a discussion about condition approval number 7.
Yeah, on number 7, I think that we can delete the last clause of that sentence because we're not going to connect the front porch to the ground. We're going to use the side entry instead.
Yeah, so it's not.
Start by deleting that.
I agree with that.
So did we decide, are we removing the gable or keeping the gable? And is this entrance moving to the dining, the breakfast area instead of in the center, or?
Well, I put a lot of stock in what our architect had to say, and he was satisfied with the gable being there as long as it was enclosed rather than open. And I think that is called for in one of the other conditions here. Oh yeah, close the gables.
Gable, yeah.
Which condition is
Why
that?
don't, perhaps maybe we can we can leave them the option to either remove the gable or close the gable, depending on what they decide. They want to mock it up both ways and make a decision.
Okay.
I think
I would be okay with it either way. One of the comments from a neighbor, Chrissy, darn it, I don't have the name.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. She expressed a similar opinion. She thought, yeah, I would probably like it better without the gable, but she would be okay with the gable enclosed. So I like your suggestion, Grant, that we give the applicant the flexibility to choose one or the other. What do you think, Claire? Great.
I like having the option of either or.
Yeah,
That's good,
I
right?
can live with that.
Okay.
Okay, and then the single door can either be centered or moved to the,
And then it's going to be a half window, right?
On the door, yeah. It's not going to be a full height window.
Okay. I had a question on that.
Yeah, that one is
Number
condition
20.
number 20.
So it's on the next
Oh, okay.
page, yeah.
Solid or half, okay.
So regarding condition 14, it sounds to me like the applicant has taken care of that by cantilevering the portions on the east elevation to keep it 37 feet at ground level.
And so when it's cantilevered, it doesn't count toward, because it's cantilevered, it doesn't,
Doesn't count
that
toward
what is
the-
that grade?
Doesn't count toward the at grade dimension. At
Okay.
grade, yeah.
yeah, and maybe will be the holdout here, but as far as the east elevation, I don't actually think that I mind so much if the foundation did extend out there and that little bit where the sink is I guess what is that in there? But regardless, on the east elevation, if the foundation went out further, to keep kind of the bungalow form, the narrower it gets, the more vertical it looks. So I guess I'm okay with the way it is.
You're okay with the way it was drawn?
Yeah, I don't want it any narrower than it is already because I think it would look too narrow and tall relative to its height.
I'm inclined to agree on that point.
Yeah, because you want that verticality, or excuse me, the horizontally.
Yeah, you don't, yeah.
A lot of way.
So I had noted 2 additional conditions of approval that were not stated here, and regarding the setback, we want a condition that affirms that west elevation setback is consistent with code.
Chair Basinger, I have a proposed condition of approval number 26 to add.
Okay,
Is that the applicant shall revise the porch and house design to reduce the width 5 inches to meet the underlying zone side yard setback. So it kind of gives the applicant full reign to find where they want to take their 5 inches.
okay. Everybody happy with that one?
Yes.
And then I think you, Christina, mentioned something, the standard siding condition.
Number 15, you can see that there, just been revised. So back to 7 though, 14, One thing that may be worth to add to 14 is just a confirmation. I'm hearing two things, two confirmations. One, is there a clear direction from the board that the applicant does not have to have the east elevation at grade? And B, confirmation that the board approves the porch as proposed with the following. You can provide options for, if you want to, of the under part of the porch, what kind of material should be used.
What's the last?
Underside of the porch is easy. We just say lattice that's consistent with code.
Mm-hmm.
Lattice or siding to the, yeah.
And I guess the question is confirmation that there is clear direction about the east elevation cantilevered versus at grade. And I will, based on that, I'll come up with a revised condition number 14.
Okay. Grant, I heard you vote for at grade, and I will add mine to that. Ray, Claire, what do you guys say?
I can live with that grade.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and write it up that way, Christina, and I think we are ready for a motion here.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I need to figure out what I'm writing.
I need a haircut.
Second, I'm almost there.
I've got my hat on.
I know I've been wearing a hat a lot more than I normally do.
I've been giving myself my own haircuts, but the problem is beard. If I go in and get a haircut, I can't even get a beard trim. They won't allow it until at least phase 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you had all barbers, you're required to wear a face mask.
Oh.
Well, Christina's pulling that up. Sorry, one last question, guys, for the deliberations here. Since we added the new gable on the west elevation, should that be closed? If they keep the gable on the north elevation and that's closed, should the west gable be closed on the porch to match?
Good point. They should match, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd lean more toward closed gable on that west elevation.
So the porch should be revised to have a closed gable as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, on the west side, yeah.
Okay, almost there. Okay, this is my revised condition approval 14. The applicant shall reduce the full width of the porch to be a maximum 37 feet at grade. The the east elevation bump out may be allowed at grade or cantilevered. The porch proposed in the May revised plan is allowed and shall be revised to show a closed gable with siding or with lap siding or square wood lattice beneath as cover. I'll say that again. The applicant shall reduce the full width of the porch to be a maximum of 37 feet at grade. The east elevation bump out may be allowed at grade or cantilevered. The porch proposed at the side porch proposed in the May revised plan is allowed and shall be revised to show a closed gable with siding, lap siding or square wood lattice beneath. Board, let me know if I captured everything.
I think you did.
Okay, so the revised conditions you can have in your motion. Revised condition you don't have to name them, but these are the revised conditions. Number 7, that says the applicant shall modify the entryway to remove or close the gable on the 4th Avenue elevation. The one I just read, number 14. The clarification that smooth lap siding can be 4 or 6 inches or wood. Confirmation of 20 that the doors on the 4th Avenue, not street, wrong neighborhood, 4th Avenue elevation shall be solid or half light. And finally, condition number 26, the applicant shall revise the porch and house to reduce the width 5 inches to meet the underlying zone side yard setback. And as part of this, real quickly, I know there was a lot of technical discussion, but before you make your motion, some general deliberation findings of why, as conditioned, this proposal is compatible massing-wise with the Kenema National Register District, and why these conditions have done to reduce the massing would be helpful in the record. So if this does get appealed, the City Commission understands kind of what your thought processes were that got you to the place where you are here with your proposed conditions related to compatibility and massing.
Sure. I think that the reduction in the width of that front facade from where we were, which I think was 42 or 44 feet, has reduced the massing considerably, and the more modest appearance tends to eliminate that dominance that the house would have had in the neighborhood. And I think it's a really good compromise that we've arrived at here.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Yeah, I would concur with maybe adding something that, reducing the width while still trying to maintain the kind of essential proportions of the bungalow style.
Yes.
All right, are we ready for a motion?
I just before we do that,
Sure.
There was one other condition that we talked about that didn't get written in, and that's columns. They
Sure.
should be square, not round.
Okay, I wonder if there's one we can modify. I can just add number 26. 27. So the applicant shall propose the applicant shall revise the plans to indicate square rather than round columns.
Well, I don't think they ever were round, but square is what they should be, for
Okay.
sure.
So the applicant shall columns on all elevations. Okay. So number 27, the applicant shall revise the plans to show square columns on all elevations.
Okay. I would entertain a motion now.
So there's 5 that you called out, I mean, the ones that
Yeah.
we were considering, correct?
I think you can say, as revised, as previously discussed, is fine.
Okay, I gotta get the number.
HR 2004.
Oh, okay, I thought there was a GLU. So,
Yes, there is that.
There is.
I move that we approve 20-04 with the conditions as previously discussed, 1 through 27.
Mm-hmm.
Second that motion.
All right.
Very good. Shall we poll the board?
Sure. HRB member Stobie.
Aye.
HRB member Blythe.
Aye.
HRB member Met.
Aye.
Acting Chair Basinger.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Well, that's the first for me. I've never done one of these on Zoom since I wasn't part of the meeting last time.
Okay, well,
Same here.
now while we change over, I don't know, Christina, will the applicants be coming in for item 3B?
They are actually here this evening in person.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Bo and Nila.
Thanks.
Good luck. While you're
Okay.
doing that, I need to go remove all the squeaky toys from my dog's box of tricks. I'll be right back.
Anybody want to take a 2-minute break while we reboot for item 3B? Okay, everybody, are we set to go?
Sure.
Okay, well, we're going to reopen the public hearing here on item number 3B on the agenda, GLU 20-0005, HR 2001. And I'll ask staff for an opinion. Do we need to reread the
We do, because our applicants were not in the room at the time of the first meeting, which is the one problem with Zoom meetings, is we have to read it every time.
Okay. Okay. We now commence the public hearing on agenda item HR 20-01. A request for approval of a live-work structure in the McLaughlin Conservation District on 5th Street. The criteria for approval of a land use action are contained in Chapter 17 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. The proposed development must comply with applicable provisions contained in the City of Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. Generally, unless otherwise noted, if a request is found to be consistent with the municipal code, it is considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you wish to participate in this hearing, including challenges for bias or conflict of interest, you must complete the sign-in form located on the tablet on the table at the front of the room and deliver it to staff. Please do so immediately. The chair will only recognize those who have submitted complete forms. Testimony will be taken in the following order. First, the applicant. Second, testimony in favor. Third, testimony in opposition. And fourth, rebuttal by the applicant. When recognized by the chair, please come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and make your statement. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented regarding this request must be directed toward the applicable criteria or any other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Please address only the applicable criteria for the decision. Please do not repeat testimony. If you wish, you may choose merely to agree with the previous speaker's statement. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of persons to participate in the public hearing, either orally or in writing, precludes that person's right of appeal to the City Council or LUBA. Written testimony submitted prior to the hearing constitutes participation in the hearing. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The Commission shall grant such a request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to the standards contained in ORS 197.763. Do any board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
No.
Did everybody speak there? And I will repeat what I said before. My wife and I are licensed Oregon real estate brokers, and in that capacity, we assist buyers and sellers of residential property in Oregon City and surrounding areas, including McLaughlin and Kenema districts. This property is not on the market. We have never been involved with it in any way, and there is no conflict of interest. Has everybody visited the site? I have.
I have.
Claire is silent. Whoop, there you go.
Sorry, I didn't know that I had it on mute.
Okay, does anybody from the audience wish to provide comment or challenge a conflict of interest or ex parte contact statement regarding this application? If not, we will proceed then to the staff report.
All right. Thank you, Acting Chair Basinger. This is HR 2001, which is a historic review for a new live-work unit in the McLaughlin Conservation District. I'd like to enter into the record this evening the email from John McLaughlin. It was also in the last application, and an email from John Delson. The email from John McLaughlin, I'll read it into the record. Let me get it right here. He writes, for HR 2001, it is better, but still feels top heavy on the upper roof level. Historic district, fringe zone or not, it still applies. I'm definitely not a fan of a third-party letter from Jessica Ingman as a hired outsider for their cause. I would go with what the majority of the board feels. This is his comments. Mr. Delson's email relates to retaining walls, and I have a recommended revised condition of approval that may address this question. So let me go back to the presentation. Your options this evening. Oops. All right. My clicker isn't communicating with the computer. Or would you mind? Oh, maybe it is now. So your options this evening to deny the application, to request the applicant provide a 120-day extension to September 6th if you need any additional revisions, or to approve the revised plans as submitted with conditions, and make an additional finding that the board can determine that the revised plans provide sufficient mitigation for the design and massing of the building, and there are sufficient findings to show that the garage cannot be relocated to the side or rear of the building without substantial regrading of the site. As always, more findings are better in this situation. We are learning as applications get appealed to the City Commission, they really are interested in learning about how the Historic Review Board made their determination and how the revised conditions really provided the findings they need to show compatibility. So just a couple slides to reorientate yourself. This is on 5th Street in the McLaughlin Conservation District. It abuts John Adams, which is an unbuilt right-of-way, which is a path leading up to our Waterboard Park. This shows the site location and topography. This is zoned MUC1. This property and the property next door are kind of on their own, but they are really only 2 blocks away from the 7th Street corridor. This is also in the Geologic Hazard Overlay District. The site slopes, and you can see the contours. It's downsloping, so the far corner is the highest port of the property. This will also go through a geologic hazard review as well as a site plan and design review for live work. I provided an additional staff memo that provided a little more a background on what the live work use is. It's a use that was adopted in our code after the design guidelines for new construction were approved in 2006, and then they were further added onto across the city in our recent equitable housing code update. So it is kind of a hybrid use that is not permitted in the residential zonings unless through conditional use for the medium density residential, and is allowed in our commercial districts, but with a requirement for a specific amount of commercial space. So it's really not a single family house or a commercial. It's kind of a third definition. And so let me know during questions if you have any questions about that staff memo that tried to kind of provide more of a zoning planning look at that use. There's also additional requirements through site plan design review the applicant will need to make as part of their site plan design review requirements. These include parking and other size review requirements for the commercial space. Here we are looking at 5th Street, looking up the street past the 1960s low horizontal building, and the property is just behind that building. Here's showing kind of right where the unbuilt John Adams is, right at 5th Street. So this is the top part of the property. There are some adjacent historic resources to your left, and then we added the 909 Washington Street, which is kind of Oregon City's McLaughlin Conservation District's prime example of a foursquare, and this is on Washington Street, a little farther down the street. The applicant provided some revised plans that are in your packet, and I know he will go over them, but the major revision that I see is an attempt to look at a way to provide separation from the garage and the main volume, but also still utilizing the garage and left elevation as the retaining wall into the hillside slope. And I think that's the crux of the discussion is detaching the garage does make it a lot more complicated in the geologic hazard review, and how to design that retaining wall. Is it on its own, or is it built into the design of that elevation? So this, you can see that there is about a 3-foot 8-inch separation till you get to kind of almost to the end of the garage, but it clearly separates the garage out visually from the front part of the foursquare main body of the house. This shows the revised plans. This is the revised side elevation. So this is the downhill. This is what you're looking at when you look up the hill. And this is the elevation closest to the 1960s Guild Mortgage Building. This is the rear elevation. And this is the left elevation, which is the elevation that's kind of into the hillside, and that discussion about how best to design the garage. In a further slide, I'll show the conditions of approval, but my recommendation is to revise the conditions of approval if there needs to be any additional retaining walls, that they cannot be taller than 6 feet, especially any area related to in front of the garage doors to the kind of front of the 5th. Sometimes with the elevation, you need to provide a retaining wall kind of from the garage to the street, and just referring what the maximum height would be allowed, and that gives them direction as they go through the geologic hazard review. This is a revised perspective. You can kind of see that separation between the garage and the house and that front part. So as with the last meeting, kind of have 2 questions I think the board needs to answer with their additional findings if this application as condition can be approved this evening. And looking at, has the applicant reduced the massing enough to be compatible with the district, knowing that this is not a single family house and this is not a traditional commercial house like an office or multifamily, but it is a live-work use, which is kind of a hybrid or a different use. So how do you view this use as it relates to massing? That's kind of question number 1. Question number 2, garage location. Given the site slope, the garage has been pushed back. Is the revised plan sufficient and as the applicant provided sufficient findings to show that the garage could not be relocated without substantial regrading. The board has made this finding in two other situations in Kenema, the green application and the Biceline, as it related to a steeply sloped lot. That, however, is more of a single-family house, whereas if a commercial use, you wouldn't necessarily have an attached garage. But once again, this live-work use is kind of a third use. It's neither single-family or commercial. So it'd be good for the board to have that conversation about how you see that as it relates to both massing and garage. We have proposed conditions of approval that are based on the revised plans. One recommendation I would have, I'm going to go to condition of approval number 6 that talks about the materials of any retaining wall. This is a great place to add any further descriptions about the maximum height, be it related to the garage or not. So I have a potential proposed condition refinement that says all retaining walls associated with the garage and the left elevation shall be no more than 6 feet tall. All other retaining walls shall be no taller than 3 feet. So that's one option. We can see what the applicant and the board thinks about that, but that condition makes the most sense. Condition number 6 to be the one that is revised to further clarify retaining walls on site when they're not associated with the actual structure of the house. So once again, kind of your options this evening is to, oh, that was the previous one, I apologize. I'm gonna go back to the front slide. Is to deny the application, request an extension to have the applicant provide additional revisions, or approve the revised plans with conditions, be it revised or not, with the additional findings about massing and the garage location. So I'm available to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Christina. Any comments, board members? Questions for staff? If there are no questions, then we will call the applicants and hear what they have to say.
My name is John Delson.
Welcome back.
Hello. My name is John Delson with Delson Engineering Inc. I'm based from Vancouver, Washington. And since the last time we did hear the concerns from the board about the location of the garage and the height of the building or the massing of the building. So we listened to these concerns and we provided a number of revisions after consulting with city staff and listening to recommendation and also consulting with independent historic preservation specialist, Jessica Engelman. So we proposed a few changes to the plans, and I would like to explain a little bit more about the location of the garage as we understand its prime concern. So in front of the garage, I would like to ask the staff maybe show the site plan and also the front isometric elevation. And so in front, to keep it going, in front of the garage on the left side, we do have need for a retaining wall, and we can provide this retaining wall. This is at the bottom of the screen below this arrow, blue arrow, and we can do a smooth concrete finish, concrete retaining wall, not more than 6 feet high. And the wall will keep going, must keep going up the hill, and this will be the left side of the garage. So as we know, there's no need for windows over there or living space. And then following up crawl space, but the crawl space will be lifted, and we will try to follow the natural grade of the site to minimize the excavation and minimize the retaining wall because our understanding is that the geotechnical engineer from the city would not recommend the retaining walls to be higher than 8 feet, even in the part of the building. And the best solution is to use the retaining wall in conjunction with concrete slab placed on the ground. So this is typically used in engineering to stabilize the wall and increase the factor of safety for sliding. So this concrete wall in front of the garage, of course, we need, because even if we go 15% up on the driveway, we still may end up under 6 feet of retaining, and then following up in the garage. Okay, so the driveway concrete also will support the wall, and likewise the garage concrete slab on grade will prevent the wall from sliding. This solution was presented at the preliminary meeting with the city staff and was accepted by city staff, a geotechnical engineer. So based on this, we resolved the other issues, and commercial studio has been placed in front of the building facing the street. This is also one of the city planning and zoning requirement, and this is the only living space we can afford at the ground level. On the left side, we have 10-foot setback from the property line, and this is, I understand, the minimum setback, although theoretically we can go from property to property using commercial zoning. However, this particular site has a limitation of 10 feet setback on the left from JQ Adams. And on the right side, we left about 6 feet of space between the building and the property line. This will be used later by civil engineer to provide stormwater management. So we cannot, for example, create a driveway or hard surface, impervious area, impervious surface. This side of the building will be used for detention facility. Okay, so this retaining wall and the geotechnical situation and the shape of the lot and the sloping condition dictate the way to manage the slope and to retain the dirt and minimize the excavation. Now, the second concern was about the massing. So we cut the building on the back. We eliminated 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom on the back of the building. We reshaped the building. We squeezed the building and provided the 3 feet something separation, visual separation from the building. And also, instead of a single 16 feet wide garage door, we introduced 2 smaller doors. The other thing, we also worked on the elevation and lowered the roof. Currently, according to city standards, the elevation is calculated from the average grade from the front elevation to the mid portion of the roof. And as we see, this height on the average, from average grade height to the mid portion of the roof is below 30 feet. I don't know if the board has any questions, but otherwise, I would like to thank everybody for the for participation, and we would like to ask your opinion, and we appreciate understanding and cooperation in this situation, and also would like to introduce Ms. Jessica Engelman. She was serving for about 20 years in historic preservation as a historic preservation specialist on the City of Portland Landmark Commission. And she would like to add her opinion as well to the record. So unless there are any questions for, yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, there are questions for John? Okay, I'll just jump in. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Maybe first to address Mr. McLaughlin's comment earlier. I just want to say that I'm a friendly voice here, that the applicant brought me on to help articulate their position, to participate in this, that if you have further questions or comments, that perhaps having someone that's knowledgeable in the historic preservation field would be beneficial to have with them as they move through this process. So I'm sure you all took a look at my letter, provided a few comments. They asked me to particularly take a look at the massing and the garage and provide my thoughts there. I am familiar with the site. I did some graduate work in Oregon City. And so I sort of looked at this from the approach of compatibility and looking at the types of historic resources you have and seeing that this particular property is at the edge of the district where that density and that consistency of the pattern of the historic resources isn't quite as robust, leaving perhaps an opportunity for a little more flexibility given the constraints of the sloped site, as well as the program achievements that they're trying to make with the commercial use here. So I thought their approach was sort of doing the Craftsman Foursquare, which is a building type, obviously, that has a little bit more, can handle the larger square footage in its architectural presentation. So I think at the district edge that the massing in terms of particularly looking at that front facade and that side facade, that from my perspective, it didn't seem completely out of character with the district, especially since you weren't balancing it with two smaller homes on either side. And then with respect to the garage, I mean, I understand how tricky that is, that you have a pattern in a district with detached garages. Again, looking at this particular site, it seemed like it wasn't as obtrusive on the district, having a change in that pattern where you did not have that adjacency issue of other historic resources sort of setting the tone. And the other thing is that to a certain extent, I feel like in historic preservation, we always have to balance how much do we make it look like a historic resource in the district versus sort of acknowledging that it is a modern building with modern program requirements. And I agree that it's a challenge here. Just from my personal take on it, I realize you're the ones that ultimately have to decide what meets the guidelines, is that sort of forcing that garage to be detached in terms of a spacing, which I think what they've done is certainly a nod in the right direction. I actually like the fact that they've broken up the garage doors. I feel like that helps change the scale a bit more. But in terms of trying to push that to the back of the site and ultimately having really large retaining walls is both a real financial feasibility, I think, crisis for this building to actually happen. And then I'm not sure overall what is gained in terms of compatibility. I feel like that what would be gained there isn't a huge win for the historic district, and makes so much more sense for the site for that garage to stay forward and feel a little bit more attached to the house. Those were my two main comments. And again, I'm here to help with any questions and discussion points, and just be part of helping this applicant meet the design guidelines and get to an approval.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Okay, go ahead, Claire.
Is this going to be a care facility with so many bedrooms and stuff? This is of the applicant.
At this time, we are not considering this project for that usage.
At this time, but do you anticipate that you might in the future?
No, did not come to my attention.
Okay.
There was something about it in the staff report, I believe, Claire.
What?
There's something, I'm trying to find it, but I believe there was something in the staff report about not having that in the actual application.
Is it just, to me, it doesn't look like a single family resident. I mean, it's just the massing, and I think the massing is even more pronounced with it being situated next to the Guild building, which is so low, has such a low ground hugging massing.
But of course, the Guild building would not be allowed to be built today. It was built before the regulations
Right.
were even thought up. But
Right.
You're absolutely right about the contrast between them.
Yeah, and so it really, you know, kind of adds more, just because of the, like it's adjacent, you know, to that building. And then I have a question. I don't know if I should bring it up now, but I'm looking on page 13, the rendering streetscape drawing revised April 2020. I wanted to ask about the detail. Do you have that?
I'm looking for it a second.
It's the sketching with the landscaping on it.
Is it the color rendering?
On the
color rendering?
Oh, well, I printed mine in black and white, sorry.
Well, that one still has the garage attached. The applicant's revised plans, page 3, shows a similar drawing that shows it with the garage separated, not attached, but separated.
Right. But my question was, and I don't know if it's, I guess I should, hold on a second.
Would this one help? Claire, this is a 3D perspective. Is that helpful? That's based on the plans
proposed. That's the one I was talking about.
So that's the one, okay. All right, then that answers my question, because I was looking at the detailing under the dormer. So, all right, I will put that one away and get to, sorry, page 3. Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Maybe for John. So I think one of the biggest, points of change between the last meeting and this meeting is on that, the roof line, I guess, and the dormer and how that's situated. And, John's comments in his email were in regard to it being a little bit top heavy, still. And I think, when you compare it to the way the dormer and the roof line are on that Washington Street Foursquare, that was in the presentation as being kind of the prototypical Foursquare in the district. Could you, I guess, maybe elaborate on that and, the differences there and why you chose what you have here?
Okay, so originally we had the full upper floor, because really for residential we had only 2 levels, because as we know this is a hybrid building. So basically 2 levels for residential and less than 1,000 square feet for commercial space. However, when there was a concern about the height of the building, then we lowered the roof and we cut the upper floor. And currently these dormers, we can see, only allow us to have some living space at 8 feet ceiling. And we've seen similar designs in the neighborhood. So that shows kind of like a 2.5 story of residential. However, again, I'd like to highlight this is not residential. So commercial is the ground level. And I don't know if this constitutes a full story because it's only on the front of the building. Behind this, as we see, we have crawl space, so no living space on the ground level. So the living space or residential usage is only the main level and the attic. So we created this jogging roof situation to allow some usable space under the attic. As you can see on the floor plan, I mean, we can look at the floor plan of the attic space.
You know, I don't know if I added that in. I didn't add all floor plans, but they're in the packet of the revised plans attached to the agenda.
Yeah, so it's very small usable space that the roof seems to be higher, but only at these dormers we can, as I said, utilize because the roof cutting to the living space too much. So the dormers will allow us to use, however, the dormer is the width of the dormer 8 feet, and the right side is more 18. Can't remember also without looking at the plans. But anyway, these dormers allow us to have 8-foot ceiling at the attic space and have one bedroom, one bathroom, small kitchenette, and some small living at the attic. Okay. And we don't see much possibility to cut this. Otherwise, the owner is not getting not in half of they anticipated to get from this lot. I don't know if this will help.
Yes, you answer my questions,
yeah,
I guess.
But we also squeeze the building, I mean, to provide the separation, the 3 feet from the garage, we squeeze the building and we eliminated some square footage on the back, as you see, because many of those buildings have been done maybe originally with like more square style, 4-square style, and then over time, there were some additions, especially on the back of the buildings. And in this neighborhood, we found at least like 4 or 6 homes with attached garages. And we have the pictures we submitted to this staff as well. We can, I believe, show these pictures of the neighborhood with attached garage. However, this one, because of the concern, we provided a separation from the building. Any more questions for me?
If there are no more questions, then we thank you for your comments. And I'll ask if there are any members of the public wanting to speak in favor or in opposition to this application. And if there are none, then I think we will close the public hearing and move to deliberation. And I'm curious, Christina, on the subject of massing, and I probably should have just gone up there and shot a picture of it, but there is a very large, I think it's an assisted living, it's a boarding house looking place on JQ Adams at 6. It's kind of greenish in color.
That's the Eagles Lodge, the Hutchinson Hospital? Is that what you're asking about? That's at 6th.
You know, I've only seen it going by. I've never paid particular attention to it, but I bring it up because it's a building of what I perceive as comparable mass to this one, and only a block away.
That is the old Hutchinson Hospital.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I wish I had a picture of it, maybe a Google Street View.
We can get that for the record.
Yeah, and
So while we're...
Because it seems like it lends some support for the notion of having a comparable sized building on this site.
It's 6th and John Adams.
It's only a one-story building.
Is it really?
It is, but it does have a basement. It's also a
It has a
odd
basement. It's like a
topography.
daylight.
Yeah. Well, Laura's
It's
looking...
like a daylight base.
Sure. While Laura's looking at it, we will need to, this is my technical answer, we will need to open the record really quickly to add this information in.
Okay.
But that's fine. While Laura does it, yeah, she'll get there.
Okay.
Is that 1104 6th Street?
Oh, it's not John Adams. It is, hold on a second.
I'm pulling up 1104 6th Street.
Keep going.
The hospital.
6th on Adams?
1104 6th Street.
It could be that.
A few blocks behind the Dairy Queen.
Used to walk by it every day taking my kids to Easton.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then if you want to, Laura, take it onto the side elevation, that has the biggest massing.
Yeah, that's the one I had in mind.
Wow, I haven't been by there lately. It's been fixed up. Is that?
Yes, it has.
Well, again, that image is from June of 2016.
So I would kind of like to open the public record in order to get this added to the record for this application. And we can close the public record and resume deliberations.
Technical difficulties.
Sold that house once.
We're just having some technical difficulties. Just a second. Google was not wanting to. There we go.
Can you explain that gutter, Ken?
No, it's at the corner. You need to be going down 6. The direction.
So while you do that, I have a comment about the separation of the garage on there. I think that visually, what they've done does the job. You're pointing at something. My only concern about that was that at some point, somebody's going to build something in that gap. If you leave the gap open, who knows what's going to end up in there, homeless people or something. And there's going to be a need to cover that opening with something. And in so doing, it could easily undo the visual effect of separating it. So I would look for a condition of approval that stipulates that no barrier can be put there that you can't see through. Like I think that it could be done with steel fencing or something to leave the gap there, but give the security to the space.
Make it not accessible.
Yep.
Can you say that again? I was in the middle of the Google search, but I didn't hear the first part.
Yeah, I was talking about the space between the garage, the gap that's there. I envision a need for security reasons to close that off, and would suggest that it be done with a some kind of an open structure, a steel gate, just something that doesn't constitute a solid wall in there, which would then reconnect the garage to the building. I want to make sure that it stays open visually.
It's about a 15-foot depth.
3'8", I think.
Yeah, and about 15 feet deep, give or take. So it's not as deep.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as deep as you think.
Well, no, but it's deep enough to become a security concern if it's just left wide open. I just know that somebody's going to cover that opening with something, and I want to make sure when they do that it's not an opaque closing off of the space. Everybody's looking confused. I must not be.
No, I hear you.
No, I understand what you're saying, but
I'm kind of, so my opinion on the garage, I guess, is that there's really no other feasible location for it on the site that has access. It's not part of the main structure. So it's not a integrated garage, in that sense. It is set back from the front. It's not overly ornate. It's relatively simple with, 2 single doors. So I don't feel that it overly detracts from, the design of the home. So I don't have much. I'm generally okay with it. I actually don't, and I might be like, the kind of outsider here, but whether it actually touches the siding or not, I don't have as strong of an opinion or not. There's lots of a pattern of, contributing structures in the district that have had garages added at some subsequent time that are not part of that main, the main building or the main structure, but may touch or somehow be connected in one way or another. And so I don't, see that as necessarily as a major detracting factor. It doesn't, that, my only concern with the gap is that it might look more awkward with kind of that weird gap there than if it actually touches. And, if you can see back that, oh, well, it's actually just kind of a false thing. My general opinion is a way against things that are kind of fake or, designed to trick the eye sort of thing. If we're going to allow the garage, I'm fine with, my inclination is just to allow it.
allow attached garage, you mean?
Right. And and I think that we can differentiate from it touching in the sense of it being attached versus a, what I would call a snout garage that's, on a ranch home that's integrated, kind of that modern thing. I see them as different types of situations. But I'm open to the rest of the board's, thoughts on that too. I don't have a strong opinion on whether the gap should be there or not.
Okay. On the, I didn't print that. Conditions of approval. Sorry, I went away from that page.
Sure, I can put the conditions back up on the screen if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's okay. I found them now.
Okay.
It seems to me that part of the issue with the massing is exactly what Claire brought up, and the contrast with the big, low 1960s style building next door. And there's nothing we can do about that.
But it is also larger than the buildings, like even across the street and stuff, you know.
Yes, it is. But I'm trying to come up with a finding that describes a reason why this would be acceptable. And that's why I brought up that other building, because it is a very large building. And kitty corner from that, there's a 1,200 square foot house, so single family house.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed neighborhood. It has some pretty bulky buildings. There's a historic building down at 5th and Monroe that is fairly bulky. I don't remember what the square footage is, but this isn't like Kenema where there's a lot of 1,000 square foot places. There are more of the 2,000 plus in this part of the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are, you know, I'm not as concerned with the Guild Mortgage building. I think anything that's there is going to have significant contrast between that type of design. It's more, to me, is more what's the impact on the residential, properties that are across the street. And then, when you think about that, start thinking towards the comments on the live work. And, I read Christina's memo about how you might consider some of the design guidelines for commercial properties that might have commercial on the first floor and apartments above type situation, But I think a building like that would probably be more, jarring and less compatible with the residential properties across the street than a design that's more geared towards the residential design guidelines as opposed to the commercial. There's no necessarily perfect solution, but I tend to think that given the location, steering towards the residential guidelines and picking that type of style is more appropriate than a large commercial building type style myself.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
And then there's the large commercial building on the former drugstore site on 5th and Monroe.
You mean 7th?
Which,
Monroe?
7th, yeah, it's not 5th, 7th. Thank you. On the Olson drug site, which I believe we approved that one, didn't we, Christina?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we did. So this isn't about keeping the neighborhood as it is. Neighborhoods change as the city develops. I see our charge as making sure that when that development happens, that it doesn't detract from or distract from the legitimate historical surroundings. So I do think we can integrate a larger structure in there, and I think that the world kind of insists that we do that. So in that regard, I'm inclined to say this is okay, in my personal opinion.
With the garage attached as proposed?
Yeah, it attached with the gap. I do like the little visual separation that he's stuck in there, the 3 foot, 8 inch separation. I just don't want a homeless guy in there.
You don't want to what? And
I don't want it to become a shelter for somebody walking up the street looking for a place to smoke a joint. More comments?
I agree with you on the Olson drug property. That's what's been going through my mind tonight. So I'm in agreement with you, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I am as well. I don't think, you know, it's imperfect, but I think I can't exactly think of what I would want to change. You know, the applicants listened to our feedback, done the best with a very challenging site, and you know, did a good job of trying to split the baby and, you know, build something that's compatible that still meets the needs of the applicant. And yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like we're close to having a motion. If somebody would care to express one.
Real quickly, Acting Chair Basinger, my recommendation as staff is to revise condition of approval number 6. And it's not up there, so I'll read the whole part, and then I'll tell you what's added. The existing says the applicant shall not use stamped concrete or visible gabion walls for any retaining walls, rockery, real basalt, veneer, or smooth poured concrete are acceptable, and this is added. All retaining walls associated with the garage and left elevation shall be no more than 6 feet tall. All other retaining walls shall be no taller than 4 feet.
Okay, that's good. Any other conditions of approval that anybody wants to add? How about a motion? For GLU 20-00005, HR 20-01.
I'll move to approve application GLUA 20-00005, HR 2001, with the conditions as discussed.
I'll second that.
Very good, thank you. Pull the board, please.
All right, HRB member Met.
Aye.
HRB member Stobie.
Aye.
HRB member Blythe.
Aye.
Acting Chair Basinger.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And with that, we send the applicant home to get to work. We thank you for your time and your work.
Thank you.
Item 4 on the agenda, communications. We're seeking a volunteer to lead Oregon City's comprehensive planning nomination for HRB representative.
Thank you. So the City of Oregon City is moving forward to update our comprehensive plan. We last did it in 2004. I was here with the board in 2004. Claire actually may have been then on the board, but we, with the revising the comprehensive plan is kind of going to be in two phases. One is a community visioning phase where we're thinking bigger picture. Where does the city want to be? Where do they want to go? What do they love about Oregon City? What do they want to make sure doesn't change or does change? So bigger picture visions. And then that will get folded into more technical analysis and revisions to the actual comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan in Oregon City and in all cities in Oregon is the guiding land use document for kind of all land use decisions in the city. So we want to have a kind of a 2020 version of the comprehensive plan that takes all the best comprehensive plans from the region and learn from everyone's mistakes and everyone's successes and try to write a document that has clear vision, clear direction, good policies that the average person can open up and understand what the vision for our community is without being kind of weighed down with a lot of wonky talk. But we do need to have a robust community outreach. So we have a lot of ways we're reaching out to the community. But as part of that, we are also creating more of a traditional project advisory team with lots of different backgrounds to bring to the table, both in the visioning phase and in the kind of writing the comprehensive plan phase. And historic preservation and a member of the Historic Review Board is one of those identified positions. This group will meet over the next couple of years, definitely this year with the first phase of visioning, to provide guidance on the documents that are created and direction, kind of how to move from the big picture direction into actual policy. So we do need a representative from the Historic Review Board. And I'm going to pass it over to Laura Turway, Community Development Director. She may have any additional comments that I may have missed about kind of your role on the project advisory team.
Thank you very much, Laura Turway, Community Development Director for the city. So this project advisory will meet up to 10 times between relatively soon and December 31st of 2021. So the whole span is about a year and a half long. And the advisory team, as Christina mentioned, will be with the project the whole time. They'll be the guiding body to create the document. So they will take all these public comments and be the ones in charge and tasked with making sure that we're getting out a quick comment and that we are translating what we hear into a document that we all can support. So we're excited to have a seat especially dedicated to the Historic Review Board. We know that there are quite a few goals and policies related to historic nature of our community and requirements for design and things like that within our chapter 5 of our comprehensive plan, and we're excited to continue this discussion.
So this evening we'd like a nomination and a vote, and that name will be forwarded on to Pete Walter, who's our project manager for the comprehensive plan, and Pete will provide all the details about next steps for that advisory team member.
Now, assuming that we want somebody who will actually be on the board throughout that period of time, I know I'm limited out at the end of this year, and I won't be on the board next year. And I think Claire might be too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'm.
Because you and I started at the same time.
Yeah, I think we should nominate John since he didn't come to.
Well, that's fair, but John limits out sooner than we do.
Oh, he does?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a requirement that you dedicate the whole time because it's a dedicated position to HRB. So if you can do part of the position and then you term out of HRB or something like that, that transition is okay.
So we can pass the baton. Yeah, you can pass the baton to a new member if you term out. I think what Laura is saying.
But it would be nice to have a continuum of somebody that's going to be there for the full, for that full project. If you know what I mean.
Limits us to 2 people.
Yeah.
And it ain't us. How do you feel about that, Grant, Ray?
I'm going to mute this camera here. I mean, certainly it sounds interesting and I would like to contribute. I don't, What's the time commitment like, Laura?
I'm sighing if you can't hear that. It's a little unclear at this time. You're going to have to do prep for meetings and have up to 10 meetings. The Historic Review Board as a whole will also have time commitment dedicated to to this project. So on top of that, you can assume for each of the 10 meetings, maybe 8 hours, including prep and the meeting itself. So about 80 at the most. I think that's a little conservative. Hopefully it will be less.
Sure.
Over a year and a half.
Right, over a year and a half.
I guess I'm open to it.
I nominate Grant.
And I'll second that. He's got a lot more experience and knowledge than I do.
Yeah, Grant, if you feel like you can do that job, I would certainly support that nomination as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. If you guys are putting your trust in me, I suppose, and we'll see how it goes.
And we will
I'll back you up if you can't fulfill it, Grant. If you feel too much, let me know. I can definitely take over.
I will remember you said that.
It's on tape.
It's on tape.
And I can see work sessions with Kelly leading over this next year and a half on specific items when it gets close. But it's all to be determined.
Sure.
So that, we've all agreed that's our nomination. Do we need to put that in the form of a motion and vote on it, Christina?
I don't think so. You can do you can do an aye vote if you want to.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, look
Done.
at that. Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for putting up with me these last couple months while Kelly's been on maternity leave. She'll be back as your Historic Review Board planner for the June meeting if we have one, or the next meeting we have. So,
Do you have anything on the docket?
Not that I know of. So we should have a canceled June meeting, it sounds like, unless something comes out of. Oh, we have a lot of minutes, but that might be in a July meeting. So right now, I don't think we have anything noticed. We probably have a day or two just in case. But right now, with these two applications being approved, most likely the June meeting will be canceled.
Okay.
Cool.
Christina, before we adjourn here, can you keep me online for just a few seconds after adjournment? Because
Sure
I have
can.
a separate question for you.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you, Christina, for guiding us along while Kelly's been gone.
As always.
Yeah. It's kind of like old home week.
I know. I'm always here to help.
Cool.
All right, thank
Great.
you all. Have a good evening.
Well, I'm gonna go watch part